Okay.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. So I'd like to start with just a quick story. So when I was a student at WSU, I had a really big event that I had to plan. It was going to be hundreds of people, a bunch of food, 4 hours of entertainment. It was really big, and I was extremely nervous coming from a small school going to WSU. The night before, I got another piece of news dropped on me that was my MC that was supposed to host the game show for 300 people now backed out, and it was going to fall on my shoulders to MC this game show, which is a completely improv sort of public speaking situation. And even though public speaking doesn't create a physical threat, I definitely felt that fear the night before and throughout that day. And I think that that fear is something that's really apparent with anybody that has to do public speaking. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to address that first, since fear is kind of that elephant in the room when it comes to public speaking. So, Carolyn, can you think of any time in particular where you were faced with a situation that caused you some fear, caused you some anxiety, but once you were done, you kind of thought to yourself, well, that really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be?
Yeah, there was a class where it was all of the comm majors, and we had to each get up and kind of tell our background. And so it was a full room. It was over 150 people. So you're basically going around, and the professor's calling, basically on you, and you're right there to have to, tell where you came from, and so it was pretty intense, and you can feel all those feelings of anxiety, and so it was kind of scary, especially when you're not used to being in a public forum like that. So yeah, I understand that.
And once you were done, like after you did it, you had all this anxiety, but you kind of felt, oh, it really wasn't too bad?
No, after that, it was probably about five minutes or so, I felt a little more relieved, and I realized that this program was going to be that type of presentation. So after a while, it did dissipate, but it took a little bit.
Okay. So, but it did eventually go away, which is good. And I think that was also kind of a point that was trying to be made in the TED Talks that you were able to watch. What was your just initial thoughts over the idea of a comfort zone challenge?
I think that the comfort zone is actually good. It's a good idea just because there's a lot of things that people are fearful of, whether it be public speaking or being in a different type of job situation, or there's all kinds of things. And I've been on an interview, a job hunt, a job search, and I had to go on all these interviews. And, at first I was like nervous, but after a while, like I'd been going on so many interviews, it was just like, I knew what to say, and it wasn't as bad as say like the first time.
Sure.
So I think that comfort zone thing is, the more you do it, the better you feel. So
definitely.
I think that
the hard part would be getting started. So comfort zone challenge, obviously that was a good experience, of how you overcame it, the anxiety went away, and that's all great. But then when it comes to maybe a different situation that you have some fear for, those comfort zone challenges are probably a good thing to help you overcome it. But one of the points that was identified throughout the talk was that when you commit to say you're going to do something new, right? You want to push that boundary. You're trying to grow. It's really tough to actually start. He said, what did he say? He said, "Oh, you'll always say I'll start tomorrow," and I know that's true for me. My diet perpetually starts tomorrow, and so I haven't. But and another point he made too was that the excuses and fear will always be there. So I think when you're trying to get started on those comfort zone challenges, it's important to remember that you say you'll do it tomorrow, but are the circumstances of tomorrow really any different than the circumstances of today? Because just like today, tomorrow you're going to be able to justify the same reasons, you're going to have the same amount of fear, nothing's really going to change. And so it's important to kind of remember that as you're kind of starting to formulate these comfort zone challenges, to try to make yourself a better person and to grow, but in particular when it comes to public speaking as well. So Through part of the talk, he mentioned the first time he did his comfort zone challenge, he laid down on that boardwalk there by the train, and the large majority of the people did not even notice him laying there. They just either on the phones or walking straight by him, even if they were close to him, did not notice him at all. How do you think that is similar or maybe different to when you have to give a speech in front of an audience?
I think some of the criticisms you might have of yourself aren't aware, or other people aren't going to notice. So I think that's the point that he had too, is that sometimes your feeling of fear is going to be a lot more than somebody else is going to perceive. So I think, oh, I messed up on this part of my presentation. Pretty sure half the people didn't even notice. So I think I think you're the one that builds up that fear, probably.
Sure. Yeah. I always remembered, I have a speech written out and the whole plan, and then afterwards I realized I skipped a whole section of it, and now I'm feeling all anxious and things. They don't know what my plan was. They have no idea if I missed, that section or not. So that's a good point. That's a good point.
I think, he made a good point on that nobody even looked. That's also culture too, but I think that I think you're your own worst critic, so.
Sure. So, one of the last points that I would like to talk about that he made was that there was this sense of pride that he had. Now, as this has grown into a viral, global kind of movement, there's a lot of pride in people completing these comfort zone challenges. If we kind of go back to your example when you had to get up and introduce yourself to all the comm students, did you feel, even with all the nerves and anxiousness at the beginning, afterwards, did you feel a sense of pride?
I think so. I think it was just listening to everybody else going through the same feel. You knew that they were feeling the same thing you were too. So it kind of calmed down after 10 or so students went. I think that after that, the presentation-wise was a little more at ease as far as being like in small groups and presenting to classrooms. I know that in high school I was really nervous with those. So I think that's pretty much, doing that challenge, as we would say. Had I known about that, earlier, I probably would have exposed myself to that type of, letting go of that fear. And I liked his chart that he had too of the anxiety, and I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I really did like that chart as well. So we have a sense of pride. We have kind of an understanding that, the excuses and fear will always be there, and why it's so hard, and why you'll say you'll start tomorrow. But now that you kind of have an understanding of those three things, and that'll kind of help you get started on these comfort zone challenges. In regards to public speaking, what would be a comfort zone challenge that you could personally do that would help you in public speaking?
I think it's probably presenting to people you're not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time when you're in a public speaking class, it's you've already been in a classroom with those people for a while, so you've gotten to know them and they've gotten to know you. Whereas when you really are in a public speaking forum, you're talking to strangers. So I think maybe doing a challenge in that aspect, maybe going to, it could be a community meeting or something, and having something to say. That might be something that would be of a challenge, I think, because you don't know anybody.
Sure. So there's your homework assignment, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, and it could be really simple, just like what you said, or something like that he did, or I have a link here I can give you to his YouTube channel. Has all the people that submit their comfort zone challenges, and it can be really simple things, but you've kind of identified, all right, well, it's the talking to strangers aspect. So for the next 30 seconds, you're downtown, you got to introduce yourself to 30 strangers, one per second. That's a lot, but just to do it, like you had kind of even mentioned earlier, it's that exposure, that experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think that the fear of public speaking can ever go away fully?
I don't think so. I think that it's just an automatic response to feel that kind of fear.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think it can fully go away. I think you're always going to have a little bit of anxiety. I think it's less so the more you're used to speaking.
So the more you do it, the less it gets, but it doesn't necessarily go away?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it also depends on how much you understand your subject. If you're confident in what you're speaking about, I think it gets easier.
Sure. We'll have to spend a whole lesson on preparing for public speaking, and that'll hopefully help as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my closing point would be that I would agree with you in the sense that public speaking doesn't necessarily ever fully go away. I think you could talk to many professional performers, comedians and actresses that would tell you the same thing. But I think the idea of these comfort zone challenges in particular would be just the idea of becoming more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Putting yourself in situations that continue to push that zone and continue to push the realm of what you're comfortable with, even though it won't necessarily encapsulate everything. So that's the point I want to leave you with today.